What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a 300ZX in for a full wrap, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to do the tricky parts on this car. Let's get started. I really like this car, man. You don't see many of them on the road anymore, and the color the customer chose is going to make this one look really, really good. As you can see, this front bumper is going to be quite a task. I'm going to put a lot of inlays. I still have to think my way through it. So when we get to that point, I'll kind of show how I'm going to do it, just to make sure we have no areas that may potentially fail in the future. Making some progress. It looks super glossy, very, very nice. But there's something interesting about this car that I'd like to show you. Right here, if you look at this quarter, right, usually the rear quarter is just one piece, but this quarter, looking here, it goes all the way around and is one gigantic piece. So there's a couple options here. Number one, you could do this in multiple pieces, put a seam. Well, this whole thing is longer than 60 anyway, so you can't put a seam there. Maybe you could put a seam here, but that doesn't look very good. So what I've decided to do, I'm going to do this in one whole piece, just like a bumper, kind of stretching it around. But I don't want to waste material. So what am I going to do with the extra material from that cut? I'm going to use it for these skirts here. So he has some aftermarket skirts that he's going to put on, and they're pretty long. So one of them is about half the length of that whole cut. Obviously, if it's half the length of the cut, I can get each side, both, right, out of that full length. So there's a bit of material left over when I do that, but it's still a pretty efficient use of the vinyl. And then that still gives me enough to do the bumpers and stuff. So let's get started on this quarter now. So the rear quarter is all done, all in one piece. Take a look. Looks really, really clean. I'm happy with it. Just come around on this side. All right, very nice. Now the rear bumper, this is unpainted, so that kind of influences what I'm going to do here. If you have this same bumper, I'm thinking to do this in two pieces. I'm probably going to do it in two pieces. Initially, that's probably like, what sounds like a really bad idea. Why would you do that? The thing is, I have this here. So because it's unpainted, if I try and heat this up and push into here, there's no way it's going to stick. And it's really difficult to lay into it. Normally you'd like lift up the vinyl and lay it in as you're going, but I'm going to be stretching the vinyl this way. So then to try and lay in the opposite direction is just going to be very difficult. So I'm thinking I'm going to put the first piece on the bottom and probably right up to here, this joint up here. And then the second piece is going to come down to here. So you won't see the seam up there. And then I'll use this body line to hide the top piece. I think that'll look really clean. So that's the plan for the rear bumper. The front bumper is a different story. The front bumper has a crazy amount of detail in it that's going to influence how I wrap this. Now, typically when I'm wrapping anything like a bumper, where I'm going to be pulling and cutting at different angles, I typically will put the inlays here, and then the only cut I make is enough to flap the piece down. So I'll have an inlay here, and when I pull the vinyl, I can just cut it on each side and flap it down to get this piece. Looking at this, it's going to be, I'm thinking that's what I'm going to do. So again, I'll put a inlay here on every vertical surface. Here, here, here. Yeah, not there because I can flap that down. So when you're looking at this, I have a body line here to hide the inlay if I do it here, right? Whereas this one, I don't. So if it pulls this way, I can cut it and then wrap the piece in here and leave the inlay there, hide the seam with that body line. That works. So it's a lot of fine details, a lot of intricate work. That's how I'm going to do it. Typically, when I figure out how to do these things, I just think, how can I do this so that it will last the longest, not necessarily be the quickest. If there's any better techniques, let me know in the comments. I'm always trying to learn. So that's the plan on the bumpers. Let's do the bumpers. The front bumper was obviously the most difficult piece on this vehicle because of all of these little details. These are left unwrapped because that's where the turn signal gets mounted, so you don't want to mess around with the mounting surface. This obviously is a very aggressive opening here. We have an inlay on either side there. And then when we come to this side, it's the same thing with inlay here, 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 and there. And then once you wrap it, cut here and flip them down, and you'll have full coverage that way. So that's how the bumper came out. And it looks pretty clean. I mean, I'm happy with it. A lot of work, but looks very, very nice. Let's move on. This was all primered down here, which made it very challenging to get the vinyl to stick. So I post heated a lot, but we'll see how that holds up. I might have to redo that or figure out what happens with the primer. I'm not sure. This area here, the skirts are not fully wrapped. They only go down to there because there are aftermarket skirts that I'll show you right now. These are the side skirts that are going on. The way I do pieces like this, I put an inlay here on the flat side. Now, it's not necessary, but I just like doing it because otherwise when you wrap this, you then have to stretch around the edge here to get this coverage, and there's a high chance of pulling back when you do that. So I just figure it's easier if you put an inlay here, hide the seam on the body line, and then wrap the main piece over top of it, the seam facing away from you when you're looking at the car. And they come out really nice. They look very, very clean, as you can see there. This piece here is just the nose piece that goes in between the lights there. So we have to take it off to take the bumper off. Let's keep going around this car. Everything along the side here is pretty straightforward, just regular wrapping. Now the bumper, as I mentioned earlier, I decided to do this in multiple pieces because of that recessed area I was talking about on the doors. It's the same thing here. Looking at it, you can't even tell. But I did it because if I have two pieces with the seam being here, I can lay in the bottom part. It's much easier than one giant bumper. So the bottom piece is done first, and its edge is up in here, the top of this recess. And then the top piece was laid second, and I put that seam right here on this body line. So it's like invisible. Even if I show you right where it is, you still can barely see it. That's that. We tinted the taillights as well, and it's just on a trickle charger right now. That's why that cord is there. If you're tinting these lights or wrapping this car at all, apparently, according to the customer, this piece here is known to break when you try and pull it out. It's very brittle. So he was adamant that I do not remove that. So just a tip for you, don't remove that. If you're going to wrap it at 300ZX, do not remove that. Yeah, so it was, again, pretty easy. Pretty easy car, very small. 20 yards was more than enough vinyl for this vehicle. So don't go buying 25 yards or a whole roll. You don't need it. And yeah, that's about it. Any other questions? Just ask in the comments and I'll get to them. Unfortunately, I can't show you like the complete 100% finished project because there's still some little bits that need to be added and the customer wants to put the car back together himself. So this is the best we got, but it still looks really, really good. Take a look.